So, what if I told you the secret to real joy isn't about avoiding pain, but about walking straight through it? Today, we're going to dig into some pretty profound wisdom from two spiritual giants who somehow found this incredible, radiant joy right in the middle of some unbelievable hardship. It all comes from their amazing friendship and the lessons in the Book of Joy. You know what's so amazing is you have a Buddhist monk and an Anglican archbishop. You'd think their different faiths might create some distance, right? But for them, it was a bridge. They weren't just colleagues. They called each other mischievous brothers. They were constantly teasing each other, and their conversations were just filled with laughter. It's this deep human connection that went way beyond any doctrine. And that brings us to this central puzzle. I mean, think about it. The Dalai Lama has lived in exile for most of his life. Archbishop Tutu fought against the absolute brutality of apartheid in South Africa. These guys have seen humanity at its absolute worst. So how on earth are they two of the most joyful people on the planet? That's the question we're here to unpack. Okay, so their very first piece of wisdom pretty much flips everything we're taught about happiness on its head. They basically suggest that the path to joy isn't about getting rid of all your problems. No, for them, the obstacle is the path. Here's the key idea. Pain is going to happen. It's just a given in life. But our real power, our freedom, is in that little gap between what happens to us and how we choose to react. They argue that not even oppression can take away that fundamental freedom to choose our response. Let's make this super real with a powerful example. Nelson Mandela. You know, when he was first thrown in prison, he wasn't the saintly icon of peace we all remember. He was the head of his party's armed wing. The archbishop even described him as being almost, well, bloodthirsty. 27 years in a prison cell. Most people would see that as a total waste of a life. But Archbishop Tutu says no, it was necessary. That insane amount of suffering became like a furnace. It refined him. It burned away all that raw anger, and what was left was this incredibly compassionate, magnanimous leader who could unite a whole country. So this just completely redefines what we think of as joy, right? It's not that fleeting feeling of happiness you get when everything's going your way. It's a deeper kind of resilience. It's an inner state that you can actually build and make stronger, precisely when you're facing life's toughest challenges. So if hardship is the path we have to walk, then our perspective is the tool we use to navigate it. It's all about shifting your inner world, which, believe it or not, completely changes your experience of the outer world. Okay, here's a super simple, everyday example that just nails this idea. The archbishop is driving, and some car just swerves right in front of him, cuts him off. We've all been there, right? And that immediate reaction is that flash of hot anger. But watch this pivot. Instead of stewing in that anger, he reframes the whole situation with compassion. He thinks, well, maybe that driver's rushing to the hospital because his wife is having a baby. Now, look, that story might not be true, but that's not the point. The point is he chose a response that protected his own peace instead of letting anger win. And this is a skill. It's like a mental muscle that any of us can develop. It's that ability to just pause and to consciously choose a more generous story about what's happening. It's a kind of cognitive reframing that can literally set you free from the prison of your own anger and resentment. And you know what? Modern science totally confirms this ancient wisdom. Holding on to a grudge isn't just an emotional weight, it's a physical one. A psychologist named Charlotte Van Ooyen-Whitley did a study and found that when people just thought about grudges they were holding, their bodies went into a literal stress response. We're talking higher blood pressure, faster heart rate, the works. Forgiveness and perspective, it turns out, aren't just good for your soul. They're essential for your heart. So we've seen how our minds can shape our reality through perspective. But joy isn't just a mental game, is it? It's also a matter of the heart. So let's explore 4 practices that can help us build a more joyful heart, starting with probably the toughest one of all. The Archbishop tells this, well, it's an almost unbelievable story from his time leading the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. A group of mothers came face to face with an informant who had betrayed their sons, which led directly to their brutal murders. Can you just imagine the power in that room? After all that pain, their spokesperson looks at the man who caused their deepest imaginable grief, and she doesn't call him a monster. She calls him my child, and then says, "We forgive you." It's just a stunning example of what it means to free yourself from the prison of the past. And they don't just leave us with that incredible story. They offer a practical framework, a path that any of us can actually walk. It's not about pretending it didn't happen. It's a process. You have to tell your story, you have to name the hurt, then you make the choice to forgive for your own freedom. And then you decide what the future of that relationship is going to look like. So, forgiveness is one massive pillar, but they say a joyful heart is also held up by three others. There's gratitude, which is that simple but really profound practice of just noticing and appreciating the good. There's compassion, our ability to connect with the suffering of others and ourselves and want to help. And finally, generosity. And the Archbishop uses this perfect metaphor to explain why generosity is so critical. The Dead Sea is dead because it only takes in fresh water. It has no outlet. It never gives. And he says we're made the exact same way. We have to let good things flow through us, not just to us, if we want to stay vital and alive. Ultimately, when you look at all these practices, perspective, forgiveness, gratitude, generosity, they all point to one single foundational truth about what it means to be human. It's really an invitation to see ourselves not as these isolated little islands, but as part of a much bigger whole. And this comes from a central concept in Archbishop Tutu's heritage, Ubuntu. It's this beautiful, profound idea that we are all fundamentally interconnected. We literally can't be fully human all by ourselves. My well-being is intrinsically and inescapably linked to your well-being. And as he puts it, this isn't some mushy, sentimental idea. It's the most basic law of our being. And when we really get this, practices like compassion and forgiveness, they stop being a struggle. They become an act of self-preservation. When we act like we're separate, he says, we do it at our own peril. And once again, the science on this is just staggering. A researcher named Larry Sherwitz found that extreme self-centeredness, which he measured by how often people used words like I, me, and mine, was a more powerful predictor of dying from heart disease than smoking, high cholesterol, or high blood pressure. Connection isn't a luxury. It's a biological necessity. So, that leaves us with a final thought for today. In 2026, in a world where it feels like everything is designed to divide us and pit us against each other, what would happen? How would your day-to-day life, your arguments online, your entire outlook change if you operated from the deep, core belief that your joy is fundamentally, inescapably tied to everyone else's?